My name is Alara. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life, I believed love was a currency. You earned it by being useful, by staying quiet, by carrying everyone else's weight without ever asking for anything back. I became a millionaire by 27, building a tech consultancy from scratch, but in my family's eyes, I remained the invisible ledger, someone they could take from endlessly, without ever seeing the person behind the numbers. And it took one sentence to break everything I thought I knew. I grew up as the dependable one, the child who fixed problems before anyone noticed them. When Kalen's latest business idea flopped, I transferred money before he even asked. When Sarah wanted to go to an elite college, I covered her tuition and the apartment she needed so she wouldn't feel less than her friends. My parents' bills, their remodeled kitchen, the mortgage payments they magically never had to worry about, I handled all of it. It was easier to give than to argue. Easier to carry the load than to admit how lonely it felt to be needed only for what I could provide. I remember one family dinner as clearly as if it happened yesterday. Kalen was bragging about his new partnership, something I was quietly funding. Sarah showed off her designer bag, bought with the allowance I sent her every first of the month. My parents praised them endlessly, his ambition, her beauty, their potential. Then my mother turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "Alara, dear, can you pass the salt?" That was the most attention I got. Not a word about the major contract my company had landed that morning. Not even a question about how I was doing. But at the end of the night, my father handed me a stack of bills with a casual, "You'll handle these, right?" And I did. Every time. I thought that was love. I thought being useful made me valuable. I thought silence kept the peace. Until the night everything shifted. I had just finished a 14-hour day, back-to-back meetings, a server crash, a last-minute client demand. I walked into my apartment, dropped my bag, and finally checked my phone. One voicemail. From my father. I pressed play, expecting another request, another favor. What I heard instead froze me. "All you do is take. You've never given this family anything. If you had any pride left, you'd leave." There was no anger in his voice. Just disappointment wrapped in cold authority, like he believed every word was the absolute truth. I sat on the floor, listening to the silence that followed. For the first time in my life, I felt something shift inside me, not rage, not heartbreak, clarity. A quiet, steady understanding that the love I had been trying to earn never existed. That I had been the foundation holding up a house built on entitlement. And maybe the only way to reclaim myself was to finally stop speaking and start walking away. I didn't argue, explain, or defend myself. After hearing my father's message, something inside me went quiet. I didn't feel anger or sadness, just a calm decision forming. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to fix anything. I didn't try to earn anyone's approval. I simply stopped. The next morning, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop with steady hands. I typed one short message to my financial manager. Pause every automatic payment going to my parents, my brother, and my sister. No notice. No explanations. Just a clean stop. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was finally stepping out of the role they forced me into. When I hit send, it felt like a heavy door closing behind me. I walked through my apartment slowly, choosing only what I needed. A few sets of clothes, my laptop, some toiletries, and a small box of old pictures I wasn't ready to let go of. I didn't feel attached to the apartment anymore. Every part of it was a reminder of how hard I had worked and how quickly my family had taken that for granted. Success didn't feel like success when it was used to cover everyone else's mistakes. I closed the door behind me and drove straight toward my cabin, the one I bought years ago but barely had time to enjoy. Halfway there, I turned off my phone. The screen went dark, and instead of panic, I felt relief. For once, no one could reach me, demand from me, or drain me. When I stepped into the cabin, the silence wrapped around me like a warm blanket. The smell of old wood, the stillness of the air, the soft crackle when I lit the fireplace. Everything felt peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. I made a cup of tea, sat on the floor, and stared at the flames. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed. Over the next few days, I fell into a simple routine. I walked by the lake, cooked small meals, and slept deeply without alarms or interruptions. I felt my thoughts clearing like fog lifting from a window. The quiet moments were strange at first, almost too soft, too gentle, but they were mine. I didn't have to be useful here. I didn't have to be available. I didn't have to be the solution. Meanwhile, my family kept living the same way they always had. They didn't notice my absence because they were still benefiting from payments I'd already made. My brother kept spending money he didn't earn. My sister continued her usual lifestyle. My parents went about their days assuming everything was still being handled. By me, as always. They didn't call, not because they didn't care, but because they believed I would always be there. They believed I would always pick up, always pay, always support. But I was done being their silent safety net. As I sat by the lake one evening, watching the water move gently under the sunset, I realized something important. I wasn't running away. I wasn't hiding. I was finally choosing myself. And even though my family didn't know it yet, the unraveling had already begun. I wasn't there when it happened, but later I learned exactly how the first crack appeared in the life I had quietly held together for years. Serafina was sitting in a crowded coffee shop with her friends. She loved being the center of attention, and moments like that made her feel important. She ordered an expensive drink without checking the price, the same way she always did. She tapped her card on the machine, still talking and laughing. The machine beeped. She tried again. Another beep. The barista looked at her with that uncomfortable smile people give when they don't want to embarrass you, but end up doing it anyway. "It's declined," he said softly. Sarah felt every pair of eyes turn toward her. She hated anything that made her look weak or unprepared. She quickly opened her banking app, expecting to see the usual deposit from me. Instead, she saw a balance that didn't match her lifestyle at all. She refreshed the page several times, hoping it was a glitch. But nothing changed. She stepped aside and called me. The call didn't even ring properly before going to voicemail. She tried again. Straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She didn't want her friends to see her panic. One of them paid for her drink, and she pretended it was nothing. For the next few days, she convinced herself that I was busy or that some small delay had happened. She didn't consider for 1 second that I had stepped back on purpose. In her mind, I was still the one who made sure everything ran smoothly. A week later, she got an email from the university. She was walking across campus when she opened it casually. She stopped walking the moment the words made sense. Her tuition was overdue. She reread the email twice, then a third time. Tuition deadlines were something she had never worried about. They were handled before she ever needed to think about them. But the payment hadn't gone through. She opened her banking app once more, hoping that maybe the missing deposit appeared sometime during the week. It hadn't. Her stomach dropped. She knew what late tuition could mean. Extra fees holds even enrollment problems. For someone like Sarah, who built her image around being stable and privileged, the idea of facing consequences was terrifying. She called me again, straight to voicemail. Now she was truly scared, and she called our mother. "Mom, something's wrong. My tuition didn't go through," she said, her voice shaking. "And I can't get in touch with Alara." My mother brushed it off instantly. "It must be a technical issue. Don't panic." "But Mom, it'll fix itself. Stop overthinking." But it didn't fix itself. And Sarah knew deep down that something had shifted. She couldn't explain it, but she felt it, the strange emptiness where my support used to be. I wasn't there to see her fear. But for the first time, the family that relied on me without question began to feel the absence they never imagined could exist. And it was only the beginning. When the message finally came, I was sitting in front of the fireplace in my cabin, wrapped in the kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. The flames moved slowly, soft and steady, and for once my mind wasn't racing. I wasn't thinking about bills, deadlines, or anyone else's needs. I was just breathing. My phone buzzed on the table. I almost ignored it. I'd gotten used to the peace, but something made me glance at the screen. It was a long message from Serafina. Her words were rushed and uneven, like she had typed them through tears. Elara, hey. I just got an alert from the university. My tuition didn't go through this semester. What's happening? Did you forget? Please answer me. For a moment, I didn't move. I stared at her message, and it felt unreal to see desperation from the sister, who never once paused to think where her comfort came from. For years, I had stepped in quietly, fixing every problem without being asked. Tuition, rent, books, travel, emergencies. Everything was handled before she even knew something needed handling. Now she finally felt the weight of a life without me holding it up. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I felt something closer to clarity, like a fog in my chest was lifting. Her message wasn't about me. It wasn't concern, care, or even curiosity. It was fear of the consequences she had never faced before. She wasn't asking if I was okay. She wasn't wondering why I had gone quiet. She wanted the safety she had always taken for granted. I picked up my phone again and read her words one more time. Every sentence reminded me of the years I spent giving and giving, all while being told I didn't contribute, that I didn't do enough, that my presence never mattered. I opened the text box. My fingers didn't shake. I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel guilty. I simply typed the truth that had been sitting in my heart ever since my father's message. Thought I never gave this family anything. I read it once. It was short. It was calm. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. It held every unspoken moment of exhaustion, every dismissed achievement, every time I was treated like a wallet instead of a daughter. I hit send. The message delivered instantly, and I knew the moment she saw it would not be easy for her. But I wasn't responsible for smoothing her world anymore. I wasn't responsible for shielding anyone from the consequences of their behavior. I turned my phone off, not on silent, not face down, but completely off. For the next 24 hours, the world could spin without me. There would be no calls, no texts, no explanations. I sat back down by the fire and listened to the crackling wood. The silence felt different now, not empty, not lonely, but peaceful. It felt like a boundary finally forming after a lifetime without one. And as the fire warmed the room, I realized something simple but powerful. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one chasing them. They were the ones trying to reach me. The moment I sent the message, I didn't sit and wait. I set my phone aside and watched the fire flicker, feeling the quiet settle around me. I knew the world I had left behind would start shifting, but I had no idea how fast it would spiral. The first signs came quickly. Kalen called me later that evening, his voice shaky and panicked. Elara, my car, it's been repossessed. What's happening? I didn't answer. He didn't realize the car loan had bounced because I had stopped the payments. His brand new BMW, parked in front of his office all day, had been taken, and I imagined the looks of his coworkers as he tried to explain. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and calm. For years, I had carried his mistakes. Now he had to face them himself. Then came the news from my parents' house. The mortgage payment I had quietly handled every month for years had bounced. I didn't have to call them. They figured it out on their own when the bank sent warnings about foreclosure. I pictured my father pacing the living room, reading the letters, trying to make sense of it. My mother, always quick to mediate, probably ran between them, panicked, searching for someone to blame. The family group chat exploded soon after. Notifications flooded in on my phone, though I didn't look. I could almost hear their frantic messages. Accusations, threats, desperate pleas. Every demand, every insult, every frantic question went into my absent hands. They assumed I was doing it for attention, that this was some stunt I would quickly reverse once they begged enough. They didn't understand that I wasn't playing games. I wasn't trying to make a point. I had simply withdrawn. I let it happen. I didn't respond. Each day I stayed silent. The chaos spread further. Kalen had to explain his car's disappearance to colleagues. My parents had to deal with banks and bills they had never understood. Sarah had to start seeing that the life she considered normal could crumble without me. They were forced to confront the very reality I had been carrying for them all these years. I felt none of the stress I usually carried for them. There was no worry over loans, no rushing to fix mistakes, no endless calculations of how to keep everyone afloat. The emptiness they felt around their missing support was their problem now, not mine. For the first time, I watched without stepping in. I wasn't angry. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was simply present in my own life, and that was enough to shake theirs completely. Even as the dominoes fell, I stayed in my cabin, surrounded by the quiet I had claimed for myself. Outside, the world moved, but it no longer revolved around me. Their panic, confusion, and frustration were the natural outcome of relying on someone who had finally learned to say no. And for the first time, I felt the truth of my own freedom, pure, unshakable, and mine. The ripple had begun. One small message, one quiet withdrawal, and everything they depended on started to crumble. I didn't need to watch it all unfold. I just knew it was happening. And for once, I didn't feel guilty. The calls started coming in the morning after the chaos had begun. My phone buzzed relentlessly, but I didn't answer. Each vibration reminded me of the world I had left behind, a world that had never really noticed me until it began losing what I provided. Alistair's voice was the first I heard in the barrage. His messages were furious at first, sharp and commanding, the kind of tone that had always tried to control me. "Fix this immediately, Alara. You will make this right." Each word dripped with authority, the same authority he had used to dismiss me for years. I didn't respond. I didn't feel fear or anger. I just listened to the rhythm of his desperation, letting it wash over me without touching me. As the hours passed, his tone shifted. The anger softened, replaced by frantic pleading. "We're your family, Alara. Don't do this to us. Please answer me. We can work this out." It was almost pathetic, hearing the man who had always believed he ran everything, now reduced to begging. I realized he wasn't calling because he missed me. He was calling because he had lost control. Everything he depended on me to handle was unraveling, and he didn't know how to stop it. Then came Diana's calls. Her voice was soft but strained, trembling with tears. "Alara, you're tearing this family apart. Don't do this. You can't just abandon us." She tried to manipulate me, to make me feel guilt, but her words fell flat. I could hear the quiet desperation beneath her tone, the panic she always masked with calm words. She wasn't worried about me being okay. She was worried about losing the safety net I had been for them. I didn't respond to any of the calls. I let them leave messages, replayed them once, then turned the phone face down. I watched the fire flicker in the cabin, letting the silence hold me steady. Every plea, every threat, every tearful accusation was evidence of the truth I had known for years. My family never noticed me as a person. They noticed what I did for them, the way I filled in the gaps, the money I sent, the problems I solved without complaint. For the first time, I could see it clearly. Their panic wasn't about me. It wasn't about my absence as a sister or daughter. It was about losing access to the life I had quietly maintained for them. Everything they depended on, Kaylin's car, Sarah's tuition, the house, the bills, they suddenly realized none of it was guaranteed anymore. I let it sink in. I wasn't their servant. I wasn't their accountant. I wasn't their invisible labor. I was my own person, and the world they had tried to control through me was crumbling because I had stepped away. And in that calm, in that quiet cabin, I understood something vital. The illusion of their control had always been built on me, and now that I had finally removed myself, the truth of their dependence couldn't be hidden any longer. Their world wasn't collapsing because I left, it was collapsing because they had never actually held their own. I didn't feel satisfaction or cruelty. I felt clarity. I finally saw what had always been there. They never missed me. They missed what I gave them. I returned to the city with the calm determination I had never allowed myself before. The cabin had given me clarity, and now I was ready to take steps that would ensure my independence was permanent. I wasn't acting out of revenge. I was protecting myself, securing what was rightfully mine after years of carrying responsibilities that weren't mine to bear. The first stop was Donovan, my lawyer. I had worked with him before, but today our meeting felt different. I wasn't asking for advice. I was presenting facts. I handed him folders filled with years of bank statements, wire transfers, and documents proving everything I had done for my family. Every payment I had made, every debt I had covered, and every property I had quietly funded was carefully recorded. The lake house, which I had bought under my name but they had enjoyed freely, was the centerpiece. It was theirs in appearance only. In reality, it was mine. Donovan nodded as he flipped through the papers. You've done all the work, Alara. Everything here is solid. We can make this official. His calm confidence mirrored the steadiness I felt inside. For the first time, I was on equal ground with legal proof and clear authority. We began the process immediately. A lien was filed on my parents' main house for the unpaid loans and contributions I had made over the years. Every dollar I had given to cover bills, tuition, and personal expenses that they never acknowledged now counted as documented debt. The law was finally on my side. Next came the lake house. Donovan explained the eviction process in detail. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about reclaiming what had always been mine. The house had been my security, my investment, and my hard work. They had treated it like a gift, never realizing that the property was in my name and under my control. Now, with the proper paperwork filed, the eviction process could move forward, and the house could be sold to someone who appreciated it as I had. I listened quietly, absorbing the weight of every step. For years, I had been invisible, relied on, and dismissed. Today, everything had shifted. The documents in front of me were not just paper. They were proof of my labor, my patience, and my foresight. They were my shield, my power, and my freedom wrapped in legal authority. For the first time, I felt unshakable. No threats, no pleas, no emotional manipulation could reach me now. My family had finally been confronted with the reality of their dependence, and I had the means to protect myself fully. When the meeting ended, I left Donovan's office without looking back. The city felt different now, cleaner and sharper. Each step I took reminded me that I was no longer carrying their burdens. Every decision I had made, every document I had filed, and every action I was about to take was mine alone. I wasn't angry. I wasn't seeking vengeance. I was simply taking control of my life. And in doing so, I finally felt the security I had earned through years of sacrifice, the proof that my labor had value, and the knowledge that I could never be used again without my consent. I was in my cabin when Brianna called me, her voice tight with urgency. Alara, you need to see this, she said. I could hear the frustration underneath her words. I asked her what happened, and she explained that Serafina had started a GoFundMe, claiming she was a victim of a family crisis and that I had cut her off unfairly. She painted herself as helpless, blaming me for every problem, and called herself a victim of my unstable behavior. I took a deep breath and listened. For a moment, the anger that might have flared didn't appear. Instead, I felt clarity. I had nothing to prove publicly. I wasn't trying to justify myself to anyone, and I didn't need to. Their perception of me had never mattered as much as I thought it did. I asked Brianna to send me everything, the link, screenshots, and any text from Sarah related to it. I read through each detail carefully. She had twisted years of facts, ignored all proof of her own dependence, and presented herself as the only one who suffered. I imagined the people reading her fundraiser, believing a story that was entirely false. It made me realize just how much manipulation had been allowed to thrive in our family over the years. Instead of responding emotionally, I contacted Donovan immediately. I explained the situation and handed him a folder with all the evidence I had collected over time. Bank statements, payment records, and documents showing everything I had provided for my family. He reviewed everything and nodded. We drafted a cease and desist letter for Serafina, clearly stating that her fundraiser contained false claims and defamatory statements. Along with the letter, Donovan included the financial evidence proving her accusations were lies. Within hours, the letter was delivered. I didn't post anything publicly, didn't make a statement, and didn't try to argue with Sarah online. I let the law speak for me. I I watched quietly as the fundraiser was taken down, the page removed, and the messages of sympathy for her false claims vanished. Sitting back, I realized how much power comes from silence paired with preparation. I didn't have to yell, post, or convince anyone of the truth. I didn't have to defend myself to people who had never known the reality of our lives. The evidence spoke for itself. Brianna stayed on the line for a while, helping me sort through the rest of Sarah's attempts to manipulate outside the family. We compiled a plan to ensure no further misrepresentation could reach the public. I felt calm, steady, and unshakable. For the first time, I saw clearly how the false narrative could have caused chaos if I had reacted emotionally. By choosing measured steps, I protected myself, stopped the lies, and made it impossible for Sarah to gain traction with her story. It wasn't about winning or punishing. It was about reclaiming the truth and making sure my life, my work, and my efforts were no longer used as tools for manipulation. The public unmasking had happened quietly, legally, and completely under my control, leaving me free to continue my life without interference. I sat in my car a few blocks away, engine off, watching the auction unfold. The house I had quietly supported for years was now up for sale, and my family had no idea what was coming. I didn't feel excitement or glee. I felt a quiet finality, the kind that comes from knowing you have stepped out of a life that was never truly yours. One by one, they arrived. My father, usually so commanding, looked smaller somehow, his posture slumped, eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for a solution that didn't exist. My mother stumbled behind him, shoulders shaking, tears falling freely. She had spent decades keeping a fragile piece in the house, and now it was gone, and there was nothing she could do to fix it. Kalen pulled up last, frantically tapping on his phone. He was on a call, negotiating, begging, borrowing. Anything to stop the inevitable. I could see him pleading with someone, voice rising and falling, full of the kind of desperation I had carried silently for him so many times before. The difference now was that no one was there to bail him out. Every failure, every unpaid bill, every debt I had covered was coming to the surface all at once. Sarah arrived finally, looking pale and frozen, staring at the house like it had suddenly turned into a stranger. I could see the confusion in her eyes, the shock, and the dawning realization that nothing was guaranteed anymore. Everything she had taken for granted, luxury, comfort, safety, was unraveling before her. I watched them from my car, silent and still. They noticed me eventually. My father's gaze locked on mine first. He walked toward the car, each step heavy, but not with anger. There was a hollowness in him, a defeat that no argument could fix. His voice, quiet and empty, called out, "You've made your point. Now please stop this." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence said everything they had never heard before. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I wasn't their problem solver. I wasn't available to catch them when they fell. For the first time, they were seeing the consequences of a life they had relied on without gratitude. I started the car slowly and looked in the rearview mirror. The house, the auction, their faces. All of it shrank behind me as I drove away. I didn't glance back. Every mile I put between myself and that life felt like reclaiming a part of me I had ignored for decades. The car moved steadily, my hands relaxed on the wheel, my mind calm. I realized then that the past didn't need to haunt me. I had built something of my own, something I controlled, and nothing left behind could take it away. By the time I turned onto the highway, the house was far behind me, and with it, the weight of expectations, neglect, and unappreciated labor. I wasn't looking back, and I didn't need to. My old life was gone, and I had finally found a freedom I had earned for myself. Months later, I was in my new loft, sunlight streaming through wide windows, painting everything in soft gold. The space was mine entirely, no one else's expectations, no borrowed responsibilities, no invisible debts. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of their demands lift completely, leaving room just for me and the life I wanted to live. I had rebuilt my world carefully, surrounding myself with people who truly cared, who valued me for who I was rather than what I provided. Brianna became a constant presence, not as a reminder of the past, but as a chosen family member who shared laughter, honesty, and trust. My friends, close and supportive, filled my days with genuine connection, without the tension I had lived under for decades. Work was no longer just about survival. It was about purpose. I started a scholarship fund in my own name for first-generation college students. Every application I read, every student I helped, reminded me that my struggles could become someone else's stepping stone. I found joy in giving, but on my terms, freely and without obligation. It was a legacy I chose to leave, a positive outcome from a past that had once been suffocating. One evening, while checking emails, I saw a message from Sarah. The subject line made me pause. I finally understand what we did. I'm so sorry. I opened it and read her words slowly, feeling the weight of years of ignorance and entitlement in her tone. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The apology wasn't for me. It was for her own realization. I left it in my inbox, neither deleted nor acknowledged, a quiet reminder that closure doesn't require a reply. Sitting back in my chair, I looked around the loft. Everything felt deliberate, calm, and grounded. I thought about my family, about the collapse that had followed my departure. It hadn't been my leaving that broke them. It had been the fragile structure they relied on me to hold, a foundation they never recognized, never valued, and never respected. Their chaos was a mirror of their choices, not a reflection of my absence. For the first time, I truly understood freedom. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady, quiet, and deeply rooted. I had my own space, my own rules, and my own peace. The foundation I'd built for myself was strong, unshakable, and completely mine. In that loft, surrounded by sunlight, laughter, and the life I had created, I felt a calm I had never known. I realized that everything I had endured, the manipulation, the demands, the invisibility, had led me to this place. In their rubble, I had finally found solid ground. I was no longer carrying anyone else's burdens. I was no longer defined by what they thought or needed. I was simply me, and that was enough. The past was behind me. The future stretched ahead, wide and open. I could breathe, I could choose, and I could finally live without compromise. This was my equilibrium, and I would never let it go. Do you think I did the right thing by cutting ties with my family, or should I have tried to give them another chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories.